I honestly think that DBT or dialectical behavior therapy should be taught to everybody. I think that they should teach it in junior high and high school. I think that I like to call them fundamental life skills.
So, Mandy, I know absolutely nothing about DBT. I would love to know all the things. However, I'm going to get you to just describe, first of all, how you got into it, what it is, and how we can, learn more or use it.
I'm excited to share with you. So, DBT or dialectical behavior therapy is something that is quite unique. I had done CBT or traditional talk therapy or cognitive behavior therapy for over 15 years. And as much as there was value in that, it did not teach me new skills on how to behave and communicate differently in my relationships. So I kept kind of exhibiting old bad behaviors that were damaging to relationships, right? So backing up a little bit, the reason that I found dialectical behavior therapy was because, let's see, so 4 years ago, I found out that my mom is diagnosed borderline personality disorder. And I'm the oldest of 5 in my family. And having a mom that suffered a really life-changing mental disorder, a mental health disorder, it really impacted our family. It really impacted me. Essentially, what BPD is, and I do actually think that that's a terrible name for the diagnosis. And as much as diagnoses can be very helpful, I also think that they can be a hindrance, because I don't think we don't need to be stuck into it either. Supposedly, according to in the world of psychology, a BPD or borderline personality disorder is not curable, but that has not been my experience. When I was co-hosting courses, the gentleman that I co-hosted and taught the courses with, his daughter was diagnosed borderline personality disorder, but after 2 years of DBT or dialectical behavior therapy, she no longer had the characteristics of BPD, so she no longer was a candidate, right? And so even though in the world of psychology they say it's not curable, I totally disagree. But let me just say, I'm not a therapist. I am a person who grew up with trauma that manifested into symptoms of complex PTSD as an adult. A lot of that came from having a mom who, so what borderline personality disorder, to describe it in a nutshell, is, she experienced a lot of childhood trauma, and it made her an emotional burn victim. And so she's always sort of just under the surface, about to emotionally dysregulate, right? It's really difficult for her to stay grounded and to stay calm. And unfortunately, because of the trauma that she's experienced, she has this deep, deep fear of abandonment. And because of this deep fear of abandonment, she will actually abandon others first. And so it makes her behaviors quite hurtful. And so for being in a close relationship, either a family relationship or like a partner relationship with someone who struggles with this, my heart goes out to you, because it's a challenging thing, but I do know that there is hope and there are skills, and this can be approached and helped in such a beautiful way. So, even though I have never been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, I definitely had some of the similar symptoms, right? Like, I was raised by a mom who had all 9 of the characteristics. And so unfortunately, she's my main caregiver. She's who I learned kind of my beliefs from, right? Like that men aren't trustworthy, that that people are going to abandon you first, so you need to abandon them before they have a chance to do it, right? And these are all really bad beliefs, right? Like, they're really damaging, and they're not going to create a healthy relationship if you believe these things, right? So anyway, learning that she struggled with this and knowing that ultimately all I can do is learn myself, I enrolled in a program that is where I learned the dialectical behavior therapy skills. And because they were so transformative in my life, I began to volunteer and co-host and teach for the nonprofit organization that taught me them originally. And they're so powerful. They're life-changing. And obviously, an 8-week or 10-week or 12-week course is not going to change your life like that. Right. But what it is going to do is it's going to offer you some skills, some tools, like a tool belt that you can then go into the world and have this tool belt of skills that you can, communicate differently, take care of yourself in a different way so you can stay more emotionally regulated. So that way you can express, your true feelings and desires in a really grounded way and not being in this, state of, heightened emotion where it's really difficult to get our point across, right? I honestly think that DBT, or dialectical behavior therapy, should be taught to everybody. I think that they should teach it in junior high and high school. I think that I like to call them fundamental life skills. So the dialectic is understanding that two seemingly opposing ideas are true at the same time.
Okay.
Now, that helps us when we're struggling with these cognitive distortions, such as, so when we get triggered, right, and we go into emotion mind, we can go into black and white thinking. We can go into like all or nothing thinking, right? We can go into this catastrophizing where just everything is a huge major deal, right? We turn this tiny little molehill into a huge mountain. We can minimize good things. We can maximize bad things, right? Like these cognitive distortions can cause a lot of damage in our lives. And so meditation and mindfulness, right, are so helpful catching ourselves like, I'm triggered, right? Like I'm super upset. My mind's going crazy. My mind's going wild, right? And then coming back to the dialectic and trying to come to this middle path, essentially. So I'll give you an example from my personal life, right? Because of my experiences, I get really sensitive when my partner is mad at me. If my partner is mad at me, it triggers me and I can't really handle it. And this is something I'm working on and I've gotten a lot better at, right? But in the past, if my partner is upset at me, I go into this extreme thinking of like, oh my God, it's the end of the world. We're going to break up. I'm going to have to move out. Like, I go into this really bad
Like
rabbit hole, right?
catastrophizing almost kind of
Yes.
thoughts.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So I need to tell myself in those moments, the dialectic would be, he can be mad at me or frustrated with me or upset, right? And he can still love me.
Yeah.
Right? Like those two things can be true at the same time. And that's so important for our trauma brain to come to that middle ground and to just like find the, okay, it's okay. Like he can be mad and he can still love me. And that helps to kind of bring me back into my body and take me out of that crazy catastrophizing thinking.
It does need to be taught everywhere because I think,
Right?
a lot of people do. I mean, I know that on a spectrum, a lot of us have had different types of trauma or we're really sensitive for one reason or another. But I think that is so beautiful. Like it doesn't have to be catastrophic thinking, right?
Yeah, and the meditation and the mindfulness help to catch us when we're triggered because
Yeah.
sometimes we don't know. We don't
Yeah.
even realize. We're
We don't
just
know that
in the
we're doing
grips of
it.
anger or this like, this mental cycling, and we don't even recognize like, oh my gosh, I'm super triggered right now, and that's something that I've had to learn. And I know that most of us, that's probably a thing, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's not like we're all, we're here having this conversation because it's so important for us to kind of take
And I
notice of these
think,
things.
if whatever causes people to be an empath, some say it's the mirror, Judith Orloff says it's mirror neuron system. Like we just have a heightened mirror neuron system or complex PTSD or probably a little bit of everything. I'm guessing a lot of us have been through our fair share. So with sensitive people or empaths, do you have any and I don't know how complex DBT is, but do you have any simple skills or techniques that you would suggest to somebody who's really sensitive?
Yes. So the number one skill that you could take away from dialectical behavior therapy is radical acceptance. And that one is a big one, right? Because a lot of times when we're upset and we have all these negative emotions, it's because we are judging that things should be different, right? We're
It
judging
shouldn't
that
be
things
this
should be
way.
different and they shouldn't be this way, right? We're making these judgments like life shouldn't be this way. It shouldn't be this hard, right? And that disagreeing right there, that's causing us pain, right? And what happens when you can shift gears and you can just sit in radical acceptance, right? So, for example, with my mom, right, I had to radically accept that she may never want to get help. And that was something that was really hard for me. I wanted to demand that she go to therapy and that
Don't
she
you see?
enroll in a program. You need to do this, and this isn't just for you. This is for all of us. Like all my judgments are being poured out onto her on what I think she has to do, right? But I don't have any control over her. And her life is her own life. She gets to do what she pleases. And so if she never gets help, am I always going to be upset? And that's a choice, right? And so I have to realize that if I want peace in my heart, I have to just accept the fact that she may never get help, right? But, the beautiful thing about life is sometimes it works out and sometimes, because guess what? She's actually getting a lot of help right now and she's doing really good. And I'm so proud of her.
It's
But this has
amazing.
been a long road. And there was lots of years that she was not willing to look at any of that stuff. And she finally is. And, whether that had anything to do with me or not, I have no clue. But I'm just grateful that she's doing it for herself. But yeah, radical acceptance, I think, is a really
And that
important
isn't kind of
piece.
an in the moment, like when you're feeling like this bubbling up of emotion.
Gosh, I think every day, all day, we just have
Yeah,
to
okay. And
radically
it's just
accept,
something that you
right?
carry with you.
But this is also part of the dialectic is radically accepting it is what it is, but still wanting to make change, wanting to put efforts towards improvement. So accepting that things are the way that they
Okay.
are, but still wanting to put forth effort to make a positive change. But having both of that, having a balance and not letting it get out of balance.
I love the balance piece because I think that it's always going to be a little bit up and down, but it's just not going to be as wildly up and down as it could be or as it maybe once was. With boundaries, how would something like DBT and boundaries kind of go together? Or is that part of it?
It's a really good question. So, but
I'm
what
here
I
for it.
have found is everyone's going to have their own sort of set of boundaries and what they're willing to deal with or not deal with, right? And for me, struggling with, a trauma background, it was really hard for me to know, like, is it healthy to expect this or is this crazy of me to expect this, right? And what, and I read this in a book. It was the Yoga Sutras by BKS Iyengar. And he talked about protecting your peace. And that really resonated with me to where, is it disrupting my peace? And if it is disrupting my peace, do I really need to do this thing? Like, how important is it that I do this thing? And if it's disrupting my peace, is there a way that I could perhaps take it out of my life or shift gears, right? So maybe we could allow like the peace in our heart to be this standing point that we stay grounded on as far as holding to our boundaries, right? So I don't know, let's say for example, like with parenting and my son and he needs to be home by midnight. And how important is it to me that he's home by midnight? Like, what's my boundary? Right. And instead of saying boundary, you could say limitation. Like, what's your limit? So is my limit, if he's 5 minutes late, that's it. He doesn't get any more privileges. Or is my limit that, he has to be right on time? What's my limit? And this is all personal. This is just a very personal thing that you get to create for yourself, right? But what I have found to be helpful is it disrupting my peace? Like, am I genuinely concerned about my son's safety? And is that why I want him at a certain home at a certain time? Right? So is that boundary there for a reason? Is it there for, established not only so I can get to bed on time, but I know that he's home safe, right, before I get to bed? Is that something that's really important to me? Well, actually, yes, it is. So that is going to be a limitation I put with him, right? Like, I need you to be home before I go to bed. But this is all personal, right? And if it doesn't disrupt your peace, is it really something that you need to worry about? So another one is like spending time with family. Like, we all know that spending time with family can bring up some emotions, right?
Lovely.
It's like our greatest teacher. And to protect my peace, what I do is I make sure to have a car and keys. So if I need to leave, I can leave. And I make sure to park somewhere that I'm not getting blocked in, right? And then that way, if I need to leave, I can just gracefully be like, okay, and I'm out of here. And I'm gonna go.
That is so
right?
interesting, because I was gonna bring up, if it came across, like, empaths feel or sensitive people feel overwhelmed in social situations, like that it's just a lot going on. Because for me, I have to balance my alone time with people time. It's like I have a certain amount of people tokens that get used up all of a sudden. That is what I learned from Judith Orloff. She's like, take your own car. You can leave when you need to leave if you're getting too overwhelmed. So, I mean, we are totally on the same page with that. But it actually it gives me a little bit of freedom instead of feeling like I'm backed into a corner or trapped in a social situation that I am incredibly uncomfortable with.
Yeah, and it goes the same with, relationships in your family or relationships with your partner. Like, is it disrupting your peace? And if it is there a way that you could, put in, like, well, essentially, is there a way that you can ask for a certain thing or a certain limitation, certain boundary, right? Or whatever it is that you need to help, so that so it doesn't disrupt your peace.
Yeah. Yeah. So my husband also works at home and I work at home. So there's some days that it's like he's got all the energy and I'm like, that's too much. And sometimes we kind of have a compromise where, like, he's really frustrated working or I'm really frustrated, but we don't want to be in the house. A lot of times this compromise is going and just walking. And it's like, we don't have to talk about the situation. And I will say 9 times out of 10, once we get back, the problem is not really that big of a deal. But I think we've both had to decide, like, hey, when it gets kind of staticky in the house, what are we going to do? What is kind of our good rule of thumb what is our plan? As far as tools are concerned, I love having like a toolkit available.
I'd love to share what's called the Dear Man. So it's a DBT skill that I use all the time. I think it is really fantastic. It really helps. So one of the things when we are learning how to establish healthy boundaries or healthy limitations with people in relationships is learning how to communicate effectively. Right. So learning how to communicate your emotions, your thoughts, your desires, right, in an effective manner that doesn't make the other person feel attacked. Right.
Yeah.
So if there's a situation that you're wanting to ask for something or assert something, like, okay, maybe a situation happened and you are just not okay with how it went down, right? Or you're trying to ask something around to someone that could potentially be really a sensitive topic. So, Dear Man, so I'll go through it and then I'll give you a real life example. So D is describe. So describe what happened with all the facts, No emotions, no judgments, right? Just here's the facts. This is what happened. And then express how this made me feel. So this thing happened and this is how it made me feel. And then A is ask or assert. So then you can ask, would it be possible if next time you would da 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 da, right? Or, the next time this happens, would you be willing to XYZ, right? And then R is reward. So what's the positive effect that will happen if you do what I'm asking you to do? Then offer that reward. So if you're able to do this, that would really help in, creating more trust in our relationship, or, offering whatever that reward is going to be. And then the man part is doing it with mindfulness. So being aware that you both need to be in a grounded, calm state, right? If someone is triggered, this is not the time to have a conversation, right? Appear confident. So when you're having this challenging conversation and you're asking for your needs to be fulfilled, you appear confident and make eye contact, and don't be bashful and don't make apologies. You don't have to apologize for how you feel, right? Like, you get to say, this is how I feel and this is how I would, prefer that it would happen next time. And then the negotiate. Be willing to negotiate. Be willing to go back and forth and maybe compromise on whatever it is that you are asking for. So I'll give you a real life example. So with my mom, how I found out that she was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder is that we moved in together and I lived with her. And so the facade of a relationship that I thought we had dissolved, and a lot of behaviors started happening that I was very confused about. Anyway, fast forward. So living together wasn't healthy for either of us. It was not a positive or productive experience. And so we put the townhome on the market after 2 years. And in selling and trying to sell the townhome, I normally would never go into the basement level, which was her level, because that was her area. But because we're getting ready to sell and the realtor is coming to do a tour, I walked downstairs and there was a kitty litter box that was overflowing with feces and cat pee and all that stuff.
Okay.
And I was really concerned about bringing this up. I thought that it would I knew it was going to go into a huge, traumatic fight, right? And I was like, oh no, like how am I going to talk about this thing and not make her feel offended? And so what I did is and this is great to do in a text message because you can edit it to your heart's desire, right? And take out all the violent language and make it very non-violent, right? So describe. So, hey mom, I was preparing for the realtor to come and do a walkthrough. And so I had to go downstairs and I noticed that there was, some cat pee and poo around the litter box and onto the carpet. Okay, so I described the facts, right? Okay. I didn't make any judgments. I didn't say, oh my God, Mom, what the crap?
Like
I didn't make any harsh judgments, right? I just described it in its facts, right?
Okay.
And then I expressed my emotions about it. So I'm really concerned that this is going to inhibit our ability to sell the townhome. Ask, would it be possible for us to get the carpets cleaned and maybe get like a special solution for the cat pee? Reward. If we were able to get the carpets cleaned, I think we'd have a much better chance at selling the townhome, right? So guess how that was received?
Wow, that was just like, it was beautiful.
Right? It was received really well. She didn't get her feelings hurt. I didn't feel like I had to attack her. She didn't feel attacked. I was able to get my point across and ask for what I needed without her feeling judged or harshly criticized, right? And she responded in a really positive way and was like, "Oh, you're right. That would make that would be great, and I will totally pay for that, and I'll schedule it for Monday."
That
And
totally like
I was like,
neutralized something
what?
that could have been so explosive.
Yes,
It could have
yes,
been it could have been such a challenge, but
yes.
that
So not only can you
that's
use
gonna be
this
fun to
in like personal life, but you can use this at work
I was
too.
just
Like
gonna
this is
say it worked.
such an
Yeah.
amazing tool. Yeah. Dear
That
man,
is
all the way.
amazing. And so the MAN is mindfulness, just like how you're approaching it
So be
maybe,
mindful of the situation.
right?
Be mindful because you want to, when you're having these conversations, you want to make sure that both parties are calm and emotionally regulated. If
Okay.
someone's triggered, this conversation is not going to be productive. And so when someone is emotionally heightened or triggered, it's really important to pause and to turn to self care. Go distract yourself, calm yourself down, get yourself regulated again, and then we can approach this conversation. And part of that has to do with the emotion mind and the rational mind, and how if we are really engaged in our emotion mind, we quite literally cannot access our rational mind. So therefore we're not making
Yeah.
sense. We're being completely irrational, right?
Mhm.
I've been there. I know this
Oh
happens,
yeah.
right? And the dialectic helps to bring the two together that so we can find our wise mind. And our wise mind is the hybrid of both. And that's
Yeah,
what
that
DBT's
meeting in the middle is what it sounds
yes.
like. I'm obviously just
Yep.
learned about this. So, but it kind of feels really like you are getting as close to a neutral spot as you can and like communicating. Well, especially if you're really close, our tone can set somebody off, right? The other person doesn't even have to know about this, or do they have to
No, they
kind of
don't
like
need to know
agree?
about it at
Okay, it's
all.
just okay. So you could be maybe
This
to
is
kind of
just
a
a way.
stranger.
Absolutely. This is just a
Okay,
little blueprint. This is just a way to frame your messaging,
that's
right?
really, I mean, it's helpful.
It's super helpful.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good, and I'm sure there's more skills than just the Dear Man skills with
Hmm.
DBT.
Yeah, that's just one little gem, one
Wow,
little
that
nugget.
is
There's lots.
so easy. Not easy, but it's
Yeah,
like it's doable. That's what I mean
doable.
when I say easy. That's so
Yep,
easy. But yeah,
yep.
one more question. It's about empaths, really, the role that radical acceptance can play. When empaths, we often feel really powerless. And I know Judith Orlov talks about kind of an energy vampire-ish kind of thing. I know I don't really like to use that phrase, but everybody gets the picture, whether it's a drama queen or someone is really being victimy to get attention or just being downright mean or something. How would they use this radical acceptance? Like people are just going to be people or
No, this is a great question. So, yeah, kind of. It helps us to
wow.
let go of the assumptions that we make because we
Ooh,
make these
yeah,
assumptions, right? We assume, like, oh, well, they should be behaving this way or they should be
right.
acting this way, right? And we're assuming that we're making assumptions, we're making judgments, right? And so the radical acceptance really helps us to let go of that, also the expectations that we hold, because we can sometimes have these expectations. Well, you're my mom, so you should be
You
cooking
should.
my food and cleaning my bed or whatever, right? Or you're the wife and you should be making dinner every day, or you're the husband and you should be paying all the bills. Like, these are these expectations, these assumptions that, are they correct, and are they serving the relationship? Are they serving you? Are they serving you in the way that you're behaving or communicating in your relationship? Right? Because if you just assume that, well, it's your job to take care of the car. And so, like, if you're making assumptions as far as, so like my partner, or my husband, if he does change the oil. And if I just assume, like, oh, well, it's your job, you need to change the oil, right? Like, is he going to feel appreciated? Is he going to want to do that? Probably not, right? So just making these assumptions. Yeah. But if we realize, like, oh, I can't just assume that he's going to do that. I have to ask, right? I'm like, hey, babe, like, would you have any chance to, change the oil in the next week? And, oh, yeah, that'd be great. I'll make time for that in a couple of days or whatever, right? And obviously it goes both ways. We do things for each other, but it really just, the radical acceptance really helps us to just catch ourselves when we are making these assumptions, and when we do make these expectations of people. It's like, is it okay that I'm expecting all of this, or maybe am I being out of line, or
No, it does. It kind of, you do catch yourself. It's just that pause, like, are they really supposed to do this on my timeline?
And I know with when it comes to trauma survivors, it can be really hard to accept the fact that you experienced what you experienced, right? A lot of times if it was dealt with, if you experienced it in childhood, there is no excuse, and you shouldn't have experienced that, right? However, holding on to that doesn't allow you to move forward. Holding on to this, like, well, that never should have happened, and they never should have done that, like, then it just keeps us kind of stuck, and how do we get out of that stuckedness? It's by just radically accepting that, like, that happened.
So the big thing that happened, just say when you were 10 or when I was 10, this person did this thing and it's still bugging me to this day. What
And
would
it
you?
will, unfortunately, that's how trauma works,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It like keeps coming back. Part of the symptoms are flashbacks and maybe nightmares, right? And so it can be very pervasive. And I know that this can be a very challenging subject, and not everyone's going to appreciate maybe me saying that you have to radically accept. And let's not get it confused with forgiveness either, but let's focus on what it does for your heart. Don't think about what it does for them, right? Think about what it does for your heart. We talk about how, or we read about how forgiveness it's for us, right? If I forgive them for what they did, like, granted, what they did was wrong, but if I allow myself to forgive them, then I allow myself to let go of those hateful, resentful feelings that come up. And so it's more for me, right? Like, it's kind of selfish. If I can forgive him, then I can selfishly live in peace, right? And I mean, it's not selfish, it's self-love, right?
Nobody wants to live in pain. And a lot of us are tired of it. you know, like, we don't want to live there.
How do we stop reliving it? Part of it has to, like, part of our, like, internal heart, to the core of our core, has to just accept the fact that that happened. And that helps to just ease the pain just a little bit. Like, obviously it's not going to take it away, but it helps to ease it. That's been my experience anyway.
And I think it's like, it's at least, at the very, very least, it's a layer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Feeling not so terrible. But I think it's something that just like with meditation or any other practice, it sounds like once you practice it over and over, you get, I don't want to say good at it. Is that even the phrase I want to use? Probably not. But
Yeah, you get better at it.
And then those layers probably fall away, I'm guessing. I've never done this practice. It just sounds amazing.
Yeah, well, maybe meditate on it and let me know
How long have
how
you
it
been doing
goes.
this, the DBT?
I first learned DBT in 2020. So I would love to share a little bit about Marsha Linehan. Dr. Marsha Linehan is the one who created Dialectical Behavior Therapy. And she is, she does research, and she's in the medical world, right? She has her psychology degree, but she also became a Zen master. And she pulled a lot of her concepts from what she learned from her becoming a Zen master. And so because there's 4 components in DBT, and the first one is mindfulness. And that's a huge piece, right? And so I just think it's so beautiful. It's like, it is being used in the world of psychology, but it's just this little bit of Eastern medicine that's coming,
Yes.
like, trickling through,
Yes. The eye rolls are probably not as big, right? There's probably like, oh, that's interesting. But
Right.
yeah.
But the wonderful thing about Marsha is that she's been able to actually do the research, to have the statistics to show that these things are actually really powerful and really beneficial. So that's the wonderful thing. So it kind of takes it out of the woo-woo realm and makes it like a real tangible tool.
And a
which is
real
so good.
life kind of scenarios. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. You have a YouTube channel. We both do. So we're in it together.
Yeah. So my YouTube channel is Holistic Evolution Shala, and I do have a lot of videos on there that talk about DBT. And I would love for you to, check them out. And, I will say I am new. Please forgive me.
Listen, being
learning
new
every day.
at the YouTubes is very humbling. I mean, if anybody is new, I mean, there's a lot of people that they're like, I would love to, but I could never do that. But the more you do it, just like we were just talking about, the more you do it, we're getting a little bit better. I was better this week than I was trying to record my last video.
And at the heart of hearts, I really believe in my message, and I really believe that this will help other women that struggle with these things, struggle with the symptoms of trauma, such as, trust issues, relationship issues, like, all these things that come with it. Like, I really know that these things help. And so that's what helps me to have a little confidence as I'm, trying to build this up.
The bottom line is, can someone benefit from what we're talking about? And 100% yes.